Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Al24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. North Korea reports 15 deaths and nearly 300,000 new fever cases as COVID outbreak spreads, and despite nationwide lockdown, there are now more than 800,000 suspected cases in unvaccinated country. Mired in crisis, Lebanese began voting for new parliament against the backdrop of the economic meltdown. Ukraine has won the Eurovision Song Contest after a huge show of support from the rest of the continent following Russia's military operation in Ukraine. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. Zionist police officers charged at Palestinian mourners carrying the coffin of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh on Friday, before thousands led her casket through Al-Quds Old City in an outpouring of grief and anger over her killing.
The US and EU led an international outcry Saturday after Zionist police officers assaulted mourners at the funeral procession of the prominent Palestinian-American journalist killed this week in the occupied West Bank, forcing pallbearers to nearly drop the coffin.
We've urged respect for the funeral procession, the mourners, and the family at this sensitive time. We're also in close touch with Israeli and Palestinian authorities, have been and obviously will continue to be, especially given the images we've seen today. We're not currently involved in any of the investigation, but we are working to bridge cooperation and available to provide assistance as needed.
Video showed police officers in Al-Quds beating and kicking pallbearers carrying the coffin that contained the body of Shireen Abu Akleh, striking other mourners with batons and forcing people to the ground. During the eruption, the pallbearers were pushed backward, causing them to briefly lose control of one end of the coffin. The incident occurred outside the hospital in occupied East Quds, where mourners had gathered to take the coffin of the Christian journalist to a nearby church for her funeral. The United States said it was deeply troubled by the scenes, while the European Union said it was appalled by the unnecessary force.
Those images, they're obviously deeply disturbing. This is a day where we should all be marking, including everyone there, the memory of a remarkable journalist who lost her life. We know that there is, with the disturbing footage from the funeral procession today in Jerusalem, we regret the intrusion into what should have been a peaceful procession.
The funeral was attended by thousands of people and came a day after state memorial service was held in West Bank city of Ramallah. At the service, mourners stood at the courtyard of Palestinian Authority's presidential headquarters to praise and bid farewell to a person many Palestinians consider a trailblazing journalist. The United States, European Union, and United Nations have backed calls for a full investigation into Abu Akleh's killing. Grief over Abu Akleh's killing split beyond the Palestinian territories, while protests erupting in Turkey, Sudan, and elsewhere.
Annalena Baerbock, German Minister of Foreign Affairs, and she said she was deeply shocked by the death of the journalist Shireen Abu Akleh and asked that the circumstances of her death should be explained in a full transparency, regretting that her funeral could not have taken place in peace.
So it is incredibly important to me, and we've made it very clear, that her death should be explained in a transparent way. And it is even sadder that the funeral ceremony could not be held in peace and dignity. To be honest, I'm deeply shocked.
Palestinian rally to commemorate the 74th anniversary of Al-Nakba, the calamity of the Jewish state's creation in 1948. In the West Bank city of Ramallah. Nakba Day on May 15 commemorates the displacement of thousands of Palestinians after the founding of the Zionist state in the aftermath of the Second World War. This illegal state's creation led to at least 700,000 Palestinians being forced to flee and seek refuge in neighboring Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. To a different matter now, McConnell led the delegation, which include the Republican Senators Suzanne Collins of Maine, John Barrasso of Wyoming, and John Cornyn of Texas, to the Ukrainian capital, where he was hosted by Zelensky at the House of Cameras inside the presidential administration compound. Zelensky told the visitors that Ukraine was defending not only itself but all democratic values and freedoms and the rights of people to freely choose their own future.
This visit demonstrates once again the strong bipartisan support for our state, the strength of the bonds between the American and Ukrainian peoples. We discussed the military and financial support for our homeland.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, on the occasion of the Council of Diplomacy and Defense meeting, said that it is really difficult to predict how long will last the total hybrid war between Russia and the West.
The West collectively has declared an all-out hybrid war on us, and it's hard to predict how long this will last. Western politicians must understand that their efforts to isolate our country are doomed to fail.
After India banned wheat exports, G7 nations condemned India's decision, as German Agriculture Minister said it would worsen the crisis. On Saturday, India banned wheat exports without prior government approval after recent high temperature hit production, and a blow to countries affected by supply shortages because of the Ukraine crisis. India officials has earlier said that the wheat ban was implemented due to the unregulated exports, which had led to an increase in prices.
The export shutdown affects countries like Bangladesh and Nepal, which are in urgent need of it. We also recommend that a concrete decision on this be taken at the G7 Heads of State and Government meeting, where India will be invited. From Stuttgart, we also call on India to assume its responsibilities as a member of the G20.
Foreign ministers of Germany, Denmark, UK, Estonia and Luxembourg are gathering at NATO Foreign Ministers meeting. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said Germany is ready for quick ratification of Finnish-Swedish NATO membership. Let's have a listen.
Germany has prepared everything to do a quick ratification process, and yesterday evening many countries has underlined this as well, that it's an important part, that there won't be an inter-between time, a grey zone, but that if these two countries are deciding to join, they can join very quickly.
In the same line of thought, at the NATO meeting, Turkey criticized Swedish and Finnish support for the PKK and refused their membership in the Transatlantic Alliance, a move that would probably prevent the two Nordic countries from joining the bloc. Mrimzian.
Finland's president confirmed that his country would apply for membership of the NATO military alliance on Sunday. And Russia has responded that it would be a mistake for Helsinki to join the Transatlantic Alliance and that it would harm bilateral ties. Finland's and Sweden's membership are supported by its people and the alliance itself.
Yesterday evening we were joined by the Swedish and Finnish foreign ministers. We know and we fully respect the democratic processes taking place in these two vibrant democracies. And if they will decide to seek membership, I'm confident that allies will look constructively and positively for their membership into this alliance.
However, Turkey has not hidden its hostility towards Finland's and Sweden's NATO membership, accusing them of supporting Kurdish rebels and serving as a shelter to PKK terrorists.
Turkish people, predominantly, a big majority of the Turkish people, are against the membership of those countries who are supporting PKK, YPG terrorist organization.
The Turkish president expressed his refusal of the Nordic countries' willingness to join NATO, explaining that they do not want to repeat the same mistake committed when adhering Greece to the bloc. To temper the situation, Finnish Minister of Foreign Affairs asked all concerned parties to be patient and was sure they would come to a solution.
Well, I yesterday called to my good colleague Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, the foreign minister, and a little bit to take the tensions down. And we will also meet today, and I'm sure that we will find a solution to this item.
All 30 NATO members must approve and support new membership applications, and the blockage of one country could prevent the integration of Finland and Sweden into NATO.
Germany is hosting NATO foreign ministers meeting in Berlin to discuss issues over backing up NATO alliance amid the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And in response to what they regard as primarily changed security environments, Finland and Sweden have already asked membership of the 30-strong transatlantic alliance, which Turkey has objected, and Moscow has threatened punishment.
Turkey is an important ally. They expressed concerns that are addressed and discussed in between friends and allies. And I'm confident that if these two countries will decide in the next few days, I understand, to seek membership in NATO, that will be being able to welcome them and to find all conditions for consensus to be met.
North Korea said on Sunday a total of 42 people had died as the country began its fourth day and the nationwide lockdown aimed at stopping the impoverished country's first confirmed COVID-19 outbreak. Nearly 30,000 more people came down with fever symptoms and 15 more had died on Sunday. North Korea's admission on Thursday that it is battling an explosive COVID-19 outbreak has raised concerns that the virus could devastate a country with an under-resourced health system. It is worth mentioning that none of the 25 million citizens are not vaccinated, as Pyongyang refused to join vaccine sharing initiative. State-owned oil producer Saudi Aramco reported an almost 82% rise in the first quarter net profits, broadly in line with analyst forecasts, helped by strong oil prices. Aramco, which is a part with the Apple Inc. as the world's most valuable company, reported a net income of $39.5 billion for the quarter to March 31st from $21.7 billion a year earlier, according to median estimates from 12 analysts provided by the company. The world's top oil exports was forecast to post a net income of $38.5 billion. Lebanese flock to voting centers in Christian and Muslim sections of Beirut city to vote in the first election since the country was driven to the verge of collapse by various crises. Sofiane Kanturi on What Follow.
The first election in Lebanon since the catastrophic Beirut port bombing and the country's economic collapse began on Sunday, and it will be a test of whether Iran-backed Hezbollah and its allies can maintain their parliamentary majority despite increasing poverty and popular fury. The parliamentary election will be a first test for opposition movements sparked by an extraordinary anti-establishment upheaval in 2019, which fueled expectations of regime change in Lebanon for a brief period.
Every person is obliged to vote. A citizen cannot be objective when it comes to the major decision of which government system to choose.
However, with every level of power in the hands of all sectarian parties and election systems skewed in their favor, commentators have warned that no seismic shift is likely. Voting stations began at 7 a.m. local time, following lackluster campaign constrained by the country's all-consuming economic crisis. The vote in Lebanon happened a week after the Lebanese diaspora in France. Many Western countries and Gulf states voted in an offshore poll.
So it is incredibly important to me, and we've made it very clear, that her death should be explained in a transparent way. And it is even sadder that the funeral ceremony could not be held in peace and dignity. To be honest, I'm deeply shocked.
Dozens of immigrants in many countries voted in early polling for the May 15 legislative elections, knowing that 80% of Lebanese fled their country due to the economic crisis.
Another gun shooting in the U.S. occurred in New York City as a white man entered the supermarket in Buffalo neighborhood and started shooting people, leaving at least 10 African Americans dead in one of the most violent murders in the country. Islam Seed has more to tell.
An 18-year-old white man opened fire on Saturday in a supermarket in neighborhood of Buffalo in New York State, killing at least 10 people and injuring 3 others. Most of the victims were African Americans.
Essential workers, come to work every day and they just want to serve the community and, get a paycheck. And they have to put up with this craziness, and it's horrible.
The killer, who is heavily armed alongside a camera to broadcast his shooting live on the internet, was immediately arrested on the spot, initially prosecuted for premeditated murder and imprisoned.
He worked his way back towards the front of the store. Buffalo police immediately respond, engage the suspect in the vestibule of the store, and at that point the suspect put the gun to his own neck. Buffalo police personnel, 2 patrol officers, talked the suspect into dropping the gun. He dropped the gun, took off some of his tactical gear, surrendered at that point.
Has been arraigned on murder in the first degree, which is the highest murder charge in New York State. Carries with it a sentence of life without parole, the highest punishment we have in New York State.
According to the mayor of Buffalo, an African American, Byron Brown, the killer traveled several hours to commit his crime.
We have suffered a mass shooting with multiple casualties and several people injured.
U.S. media also reported a racist manifesto on the internet, saying that the suspect was inspired by crimes committed by white racists, including the 2019 massacre of 51 worshippers in 2 mosques in Christchurch in New Zealand.
And to see that sense of security shattered by an individual, a white supremacist who has engaged in an act of terrorism and will be prosecuted as such in a cold-hearted, cruel, calculating way.
As a result of the right to possess weapons, which is guaranteed by the Constitution, mass shootings in the United States in public places is on the rise almost every day, including major cities like New York, Chicago, Miami, and San Francisco. In 2021, firearms killed nearly 45,000 people in the United States, including about 24,000 suicides. Several elected initiatives to strengthen gun legislation have failed in Congress in recent years, with the powerful NRA gun lobby remaining highly influential.
America's decades-old battle over abortion rights exploded anew on Tuesday. The Supreme Court confirmed a draft opinion that signaled it will soon overturn the landmark 1973 that legalized abortion nationwide. Zara Fujani.
Thousands of people took to the streets across the United States on Saturday to defend the right to abortion threatened by the Supreme Court, which seems ready to go back 50 years after its historic decision to protect abortion. Some 450 processions were organized across the country, including large marches in Washington, New York, Chicago, Austin, and Los Angeles.
I'm just completely appalled by the decision and the way that we are regressing and not progressing with women's rights here in this country. And I have a daughter, and the fact that her body autonomy is going to be less than mine is insane.
Some women proclaimed no one has the right to make a decision about someone else's body, while other female demonstrators say they are protesting for women of generations to come.
The reason I'm here is for those women, the future generations, when they're in a situation that they find that it might not be the best situation or the best time for them to have a child and bring a life into this world. I want them to be able to make that choice for themselves. No one should do that for them.
The demonstrators claim that the event would get people into the streets to stop the Supreme Court from taking away reproductive rights.
It's important to me because I had total access to make my own choices, as did my sister, and I think my mom might have had an illegal abortion before they were legal here in California.
The court confirmed that the draft opinion published late on Monday by the news outlet Politico was authentic, but said it did not represent the final decision of the justices due by the end of June.
Hundreds of native people in Bari, the border between Colombia and Venezuela, are taking the streets of the Colombian city of Tibu to call for an end to the violence perpetrated by the armed groups in the region after Camilo Burro Bocharira, a member of the Bari community, was murdered in April 2022 in Tibu.
With over 1,000 people here, we need to make an appeal to the Colombian and international level to this gathering to say that the indigenous Bari are being killed on our territory, on our ancestral territory, which we have inhabited for centuries.
We, the natives of Bari, are one nation, which is why we support each other as resistance. If they mistreat one person, they mistreat Bari people as a whole, who live on the border, both in Colombia and Venezuela.
On Sunday, statewide curfew was removed in order for Sri Lankans to celebrate the Buddhist holiday of Vesak, while new Prime Minister Ranil put together a government to address the island nation's economic and political woes. The curfew was implemented on May 9 following deadly conflict that caused Mahinda Raja to quit as Prime Minister, putting his brother Gotabaya in charge of the country. Several hundred Malians gathered in Bamako on Friday to support the transitional government. The army has military cooperation with Russia, denounces the Western. Marab al-Iwar on what follow.
In Mali, the various organizations that had called together in La Place de l'Indépendance also had their sights set on the West African sanctions that are still in force against Mali, and the presence on Malian territory of thousands of peacekeepers from the UN mission MINUSMA, whose mandate is subject to renewal in June.
We no longer want MINUSMA. We don't trust MINUSMA. We don't want our country to be under Chapter 7, which means it's going to be put under trusteeship. How can we want to put a country under trusteeship while its army is able to recover its own territorial integrity? Today, we have come to say goodbye to the MINUSMA.
In the mid-afternoon, the mobilization was very far from the mass demonstration organized on January 14th against the West African sanctions. The military-dominated authorities who took power in August 2020 readily evoked this protest as proof of their legitimacy. The withdrawal of France, which has been military engaged in Mali since 2013, and the call for help from Russia were then among the main demands of the demonstrators.
The role of the military is to secure us. Without securing, nothing works in country. We cannot cultivate, trade or breed fish. The people responsible for keeping us safe are very important. Going out to support them is the least we can do, and it helps to motivate them.
Russian flags were waved by protesters on Friday. Some unfolded a banner, "Down with France, down with MINUSMA, down with ECOWAS," which is pressuring the colonels to return power to civilians. The demonstrators mainly rallied around their army and against West African sanctions.
We show ECOWAS that we have chosen these soldiers for the transition. The duration is not even our problem. Everything we want is this country to stabilize. May this country find its dignity.
The authorities claim a rise in power that is difficult to verify against the terrorists who have been raging in the country since 2013. The country has also plunged into a deep economic crisis. Its embargo on commercial and financial transitions imposed by ECOWAS is worsening the fallout.
Ukraine has won the Eurovision Song Contest after a huge show of support from the rest of the continent following Russia's military operation in Ukraine. Performing the folk rap song Stavania, Kalush Orchestra stormed up the leaderboard, beating off strong competitions from UK and Italy.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight is Eurovision final. Our group, Kalush Orchestra, is performing. Indeed, this is not a war. But nevertheless, for us today, any victory is very important. So let's cheer for ours. Glory to Ukraine.
To sport now, Kostas Stasimiskas was the unlikely hero as Liverpool beat Chelsea 6-5 on penalties to win the FA Cup final at Wembley on Saturday. The Greek defender scored the winning penalty after Cesar and Mason Mount missed their kicks. Sadio Mane also missed for Liverpool. There were plenty of chances as the sides drew with a goalless 90 minutes and extra time. But Liverpool as to the FA Cup to the League Cup, they also won on penalty against Chelsea in that final. Jurgen Klopp men's are also in the final of the Champions League against Real Madrid.
Honestly, it means the world to us. Honestly, it is like this. It's massive. It's difficult. It was difficult. The first 25 minutes were the best 25 minutes we played ever against Chelsea. We played an incredible game, but we didn't score. And then it's clear, then Chelsea, with the quality they have, they find a way back in the game. They did that. But like ups and downs in the game. They had their chances. We had massive chances. None of us used them. And so penalty shootout is a logical thing. And doing it like this feels good, but gives you more sense how hard it must be for the opponent.
Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp are delivering quite a great season. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself and bye-bye.